Scott, maybe you can share with us another good example of how not coordinating these different aspects of financial planning could lead to a big mistake.
Certainly, James. And I think one area that's very important and a really important aspect of the clients that we work with is the subject of estate planning. There tends to be so much of a focus and discussion around investments or even around taxes, but a poorly thought out and implemented estate plan can be disastrous for a family. As an example, I recently began working with a new family who were both professors and physicians at their particular university. They had been in practice for over 20 years with 2 additional stops prior to their current university. And like many other couples that I meet, they had several investment and retirement accounts. They had 401k plans, they had a few SEP IRAs, traditional IRAs, and then the employer plans where they were currently working. And many of these accounts had not been reviewed in years. They were just too busy and never really paid a terrible amount of attention to them. So clearly this is something we really needed to focus on with them, was the investment plan. But as we began to dig deeper and talk more about their entire financial picture, we started talking about their children. And they have 2 teenagers, the oldest of which they let me know had autism. With this fact, our conversation very quickly shifted towards estate planning. They had established a simple will that was crafted online many years ago that at the very least appointed some custodians for their children should something happen to the 2 of them at the same time. What they had not thought about, though, was how their oldest with autism would be supported financially if they were no longer here to do that. We talked about their wishes to keep his lifestyle consistent through any event, whether premature passing of them or in the event that they lived a very long time. And it was decided that we needed to work with an attorney that was an expert in special needs planning. After several joint meetings and also bringing in their tax advisor, we were able to have a trust set up that will support their oldest son no matter what happens to them. They now have the peace of mind that one of their most important concerns is taken care of. After meeting with their attorney, we were also able to work with them to update and connect their accounts, titling, and also their beneficiary information to make sure there was coordination between the 2 plans.
So Scott, specifically with this story, your role by helping coordinate everything, maybe you could summarize the big mistakes that you helped this family avoid.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, again, that coordination. The documents were there, they were drafted, and they were complete. But if they didn't do something as simple as update a beneficiary, this entire plan could go awry. There could be a pretty significant tax bill due if we didn't just simply make that update. The other big thing is they had this major concern in their lives about their oldest son, and they really hadn't done any planning around that. So we were able to give them that peace of mind through this comprehensive planning.
Thanks, Scott. A lot of good examples that you have shared with us today, and you really brought to life, I think, some of the big mistakes. But I'm wondering if you could, for a minute, also share with us, from a practical point of view, when we start to think about actually interviewing advisors, what may be some actual criteria for selecting a financial advisor to work with?
Well, this is a great question, James. And unfortunately, in our industry today, really anyone can call themselves a financial advisor. This title can represent anyone from an insurance agent to a broker to a fee-based investment advisor. So there's plenty of confusion, and understandably so. But a couple of things to think about as you look to interview and work with a financial advisor. You certainly want to know their experience of the individual and of the firm that they represent. Do they look at all aspects of your financial plan? Do they have the ability to review and manage your particular university accounts? Secondly, you want to look at the qualifications that they have. Some of you listening today may have noticed on our welcome screen some letters behind James' name and behind my name. The CFP is the Certified Financial Planner designation. This is obtained through rigorous study, examination, and experience. Continuing education is also a requirement to maintain these credentials. You also want to think of what types of clients do they work with. How in tune are they to your personal financial life? On your particular university campus, are they familiar with your retirement plan options? I think you also want to know, does that particular individual work within a team? What would happen if that person that you first meet with either leaves the firm, passes away, or is somehow disabled? Would you have to go through the process of finding a new advisor all over again, or would there be a group and a team to step in and help? Also think about how they're compensated. Are there any conflicts of interest in where those assets are held? Do they need to be in an IRA? Can they remain in the university plan? I think that's an important aspect that we previously discussed. And finally, I think the easiest and the simplest question is just to simply ask if they are a fiduciary.
Thank you, Scott. Again, a lot of good insight and a lot of good specific examples, so thank you for sharing that with us today. So we'll be taking your questions in a minute or two, so please continue to type them into the chat window while I'm talking. Again, you can access the chat window by hovering over the green bar at the top of your screen and waiting for the larger bar to come down. And when it does, click on the chat button and the chat window will appear over the right of your screen. Before we jump into the questions, I want to let everyone know about a few offers that we have for webinar participants. If you have questions about your own financial planning after listening to our webinar, and if you've never had the opportunity to speak with a fiduciary university retirement planning specialist, we are conducting free financial consultations for today's participants. This no-fee 1-hour consultation will look at your overall financial plan, including retirement income planning, estate planning, tax planning, and your investments. We will help you identify if you're on track to meet your retirement and financial goals, and more importantly, we will talk about the common big mistakes that faculty members make and make sure that you're not headed towards any of them. We can have this consultation in person during one of our upcoming campus visits or over the phone, so it's very convenient. You can register for this by typing the word consultation followed by your name into the chat window. The second offer that we have for today's participants is a written report that details the importance of working with a fiduciary advisor and the impact of the new Department of Labor fiduciary ruling. This supplement to today's conversation will help you determine if your advisor is working in your best interest and important questions to ask the next time you are seeking financial advice. You can request a copy of this report by typing the word report followed by your name into the chat window, and we'll send you a copy of it. And you may also respond to the consultation offer or to request a copy of the report by calling us at 1-800-431-9740. And finally, I'd also like to remind our listeners about our upcoming campus visits. If you would like to meet with a university retirement planning specialist in person during one of our upcoming visits, you may call our 1-800 number and we will be happy to help schedule a consultation. And now we'll address your questions. Please keep in mind that we may not be able to address every question due to time constraints, so if your question is not answered today, we will follow up with you through email or over the phone. So the first question that we have, Scott, is, my university offers several different vendors to choose from. How do I know which one I should use and what investments are best?
Well, that is the case in an awful lot of universities, especially in their retirement plans. I think what you want to be aware of is, certain custodians can have certain strengths. So we, in the discussion today, we talked about TIA-CREF and their TI traditional option. We talked about Securian having a very, similar fixed income option. Know the strength of that particular custodian. Fidelity, is very good in equity, and, Vanguard is a low-cost leader. So, know those strengths, understand how they can apply to your particular plan.
Thank you, Scott. The next question that we have says, you had mentioned a potential problem with taxes if you do a rollover and keep working past age 70. Can you explain why this would happen?
Yeah, I think that was in one of our examples today. The required minimum distribution begins at 70.5, but only if the assets are no longer in the particular employer plan where you are working. So, if there is a rollover outside of the plan, or if you have assets from another university, those could be subject to required minimum distributions and could raise your taxable income if they are, not held in the plan of the employer that you're currently working for.
Thank you, Scott. The next question that we have is asking, I'm currently working with an advisor who's not charging me a fee. How do I find out how much my expenses really are?
Well, I think there's quite a few ways. You can look at things, when you add contributions to the account, there could be some type of, front load expense. Those are known as A shares, or are known as A shares. There could be a backload expense when you take money out of the plan. If it's an annuity, there could be all sorts of other expenses involved. There's also something called 12b1 fees, which it is really difficult to see unless you're looking at the particular prospectus of the investment. But they're there somewhere. I mean, you can always ask that particular advisor that you're working with to help you get a better understanding as well.
But really, Scott, the three main ones to look out for are fees that you pay up front when you buy a fund, fees that you pay when they're sold, and then 12b1 fees that are paid to the advisor while you own it.
Correct.
Okay. The other question that we have is saying, we recently updated our wills and trusts last year. Won't our attorney make sure that all the necessary documents are coordinated when we do this?
It's possible that an attorney would do that, but it's, I think it's pretty rare. Oftentimes what we see is there'll be a kind of a letter of instruction to the client and say, you need to do this, this, and this, and very often those things are either forgotten or they're missed, or they just those steps just don't occur. So it's very important, as we said in the estate planning example, that you do go ahead and make those changes. Otherwise your plan is, it's not coordinated with your estate plan. Your assets aren't going to pass the way that you had hoped.
Another question, Scott, pretty straightforward. How do I know if an advisor is a fiduciary or not?
I think the easiest way, I think, is just to ask them. If you get a kind of a confused response, chances are that person is not. You also could be talking with someone who is, part broker in a certain relationship and parts fiduciary in a different type of relationship. So you really need to know who you're dealing with, and if there's any concerns about the way that they do business.
But a true fiduciary should be able to clearly answer that question and be pretty open about it.
Correct. Yeah, very very quickly answer that. You bet.
So the final question that we have for this evening is asking, is there a resource available that I can use to find out more information about an advisor that I would like to work with?
I think there's plenty of resources. If a particular person is a CFP, the CFP board has a website, cfp.net. You can search a particular person by name. You can search by location and get some information about that person. You could ask them for a copy of their firm's ADV, which will outline both the business and individuals affiliated. The SEC also has a spot on their website. It's a little difficult to find, but you can find information on brokers there. I think the particular address is advisorinfo.sec.gov, but a lot of different resources out there. Those are three main resources, I think.
All right. Thank you, Scott, and thanks to everyone who joined us this evening, and we hope to see you at our next event. Take care.